Thank you, Miranda. I'm just going to make a quick plug for your t-shirts before we get started because they are the softest shirt I have ever worn. And as you know, because I send you all those photos, I live in my Every Dog t-shirt, school, work, Peloton bike. It does it all. So yes, if you don't have one, grab one, super comfortable. And then with that, I guess we'll get started. My name is Tiffany Score. I am the founder of Free to Be Dog Training and Behavior. We are located in Moore County, North Carolina, which is near Fort Bragg. If anybody's familiar with Fayetteville, that kind of area south of Raleigh. We just opened our doors this past week, 1 week ago. So we're excited to be here. We're also a nonprofit organization. And really excited to present this free webinar for you guys tonight. Puppy socialization is something that I feel very passionately about, very strongly about, and is something that I'm hoping to bring to our local area here in Moore County. Right now, we're the only organization offering puppy classes to the community. So hopefully this information can spread as far as coast to coast, and we could see more puppy classes and puppy socialization outings happening because they're really integral to lifetime stable behavior in dogs. And I look forward to all of your questions at the end. Feel free to ask anything. We're here to help, and we will answer all the questions to the best of our ability. All right, so today we have puppy socialization, setting your puppy up for success. Before we get into the socialization period, we're going to go over just really briefly the stages of development all the way from birth to adulthood. And the reason that we're going to go over this really quickly is because there's a lot of confusion about even what a puppy is. So how old is a dog when they're a puppy? When do they become an adult? Then you have, when are they a teenager? And that plays into what is known as puppy socialization. It's very kind of time sensitive. So we just want to clarify the stages of development before we move forward and then focus on the socialization period. So you have the neonatal period, which is from birth to the first 2 weeks. During this time period, puppies sleep about 90% of the time. They can crawl, but they can't walk, and their eyes and their ears are still closed. Next, you have the transitional period, which is weeks 2 to 3. Some professionals push it to about the 4-week mark. And during this period, the ears and the eyes start to open. Puppies can stand, walk a little bit. And then there is evidence that already at this age, they can start learning by positive associations, which is so amazing. And really kind of gives us that extra incentive to start doing what we need to do to set our puppies up for success as early as possible. And then you have the socialization period, which starts at week 3 and goes to, you'll see this is very kind of debatable, contradictory, but 14-ish weeks. So anywhere between, you'll hear between 12 and all the way up to 20 weeks is the socialization period. So depending on which studies you're looking at, who maybe you mentored under as a trainer or what your background is, maybe you're in veterinary medicine, professionals kind of say different things. So someone might say the socialization period window ends at 12 weeks, 14, 16, 18, or 20. So just kind of be prepared that you might hear that. And it's not because we want to confuse you or anything like that. It's just because there's still so much that we don't know. Personally, I kind of encourage people to just keep going under the notion that they're in the socialization period all the way up to that 20 weeks because it can't hurt, right? So then next you have the juvenile period, which you'll see on the slide. It says starts at 5 months, which is 20 weeks, and goes all the way through the onset of puberty. So you can kind of already see between the socialization period and the juvenile period, we kind of have a couple of weeks there that are unaccounted for. And so you really kind of see the discrepancies there. And then adulthood is puberty and on. You might also hear the juvenile period referred to as the teenage period or the adolescent period as well. Sorry, just grabbing a quick drink. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to define socialization. First, there's no universal scientific definition, and that's because like I said, there's just still so much that we don't know yet, and there are studies that have found different results that lead us to stray away from having a one set structured scientific definition. It's also very complex and very nuanced, and we'll see why that is a little bit later. And as we've kind of already discussed a little bit, the time periods are not very clearly defined. So all of these factors really make it difficult to come up with one set in stone structured definition of socialization. So what we've done for this webinar is we've taken all of the knowledge that we have from behavior professionals, scientists, veterinary behaviorists, and we have kind of just created a broad definition to keep in mind and take with us through the rest of the presentation. So our definition of puppy socialization is the time-sensitive process by which small amounts of contact produces stronger social relationships than would at later periods in life. This process also extends to a puppy's relationship with their locality, which is essentially their environment, and objects within that environment. So really, we want to keep in mind that socialization, more so than just a set time period, it's really about getting a lot of bang for your buck. So if there's one thing to just keep in mind, keep in the back of your head as we're going through these slides, is it's all about bang for buck as the time goes on. So as we progress through the socialization period, we're kind of losing a little bit of that purchasing power. So that's why it is such an integral and important part of your puppy's life. So this is where it gets really messy, right? We have different stages of socialization. And this is really probably why we hear people say, oh, well, it's the critical socialization period, it's the puppy socialization period, or I'm socializing my adult dog, my adult rescue dog. So we have these different stages within the socialization period as well. And that's why it gets really kind of muddy and messy. So we're going to clarify that next. So you have the critical socialization period. That is between weeks 3 and 7-ish. Always ish, because we don't have those clear line in the sand time markers. What a lot of breeders and scientists are starting to do is they're starting to define these developmental periods by what we call behavioral markers. So whenever they see a puppy perform a certain behavior, that's kind of the indication that the puppy is transitioning from one developmental stage to another. So the behavioral marker for the start of the critical period is the startle response to sound. So prior to entering the critical socialization period, when puppies are in that transitional period, they don't have a startle response. So you may be able to drop a heavy textbook like right next to a puppy in the transitional period, and they won't jump. But then the next day you might do the same thing, and then they startle, and then that's kind of that behavioral marker that, okay, this puppy has entered the critical socialization period. Also, things that we know about this period is that the emotional sensitivity of puppies during this time suggests that it is a critical one for permanent psychological damage. So we get that bang for our buck both ways. We get it for those positive associations, those positive experiences, but then we also tend to get it with those negative associations and those negative experiences. So we really want to do everything we can to ensure that we are preventing any unnecessary trauma or scary experience for puppies throughout the entire socialization period. And then this is a quote from this book here by Scott and Fuller. I'm just going to move Genetics and the Social Behavior of the Dog. They're kind of the ones who started doing all of these scientific studies that led to the discoveries about these different developmental periods, and in particular, this socialization period. They were initially interested in learning about human development and really interested in kind of like Freud's attachment theories and stuff like that. So naturally, back in the 50s and 60s, what did we do? We kind of did all these ethical or unethical experiments and scientific studies on animals that we would not be doing today. And this is where a lot of this information kind of started. This is where we started to find out all of these different things about how dogs' behavior develops and how they socialize to us, completely different species. So they said by the critical period that they meant a special time in life when a small amount of experience will produce a great effect on later behavior. So really that's the bang for the buck. That is the one thing that we really, really, really do know about the socialization period, is that we're getting a lot of purchasing power with our monopoly money, basically. Okay, so then we have the puppy socialization period. So you'll see that the slide says it goes from about 3 weeks to 14 weeks of age. So the critical puppy socialization period is within the whole umbrella socialization period. And so big key factors and takeaways with the puppy socialization period is that the most prominent aspect of behavior is play. Their ability to make rapid associations are both positive and negative. And then rapid development of social behavior patterns happen during this time period. And social relationships with dogs and with other humans are easily developed. And they become attached to both living and non-living parts of their environment. And they respond to sights and sounds of other animals and humans at a distance. And then in about 12 weeks is kind of when they start to gain the confidence to explore further away than their, whatever their home territory is. So you might have a puppy who's pretty well accustomed and comfortable to sticking pretty close to you, but then the 12-week mark hits and you're like, oh, my puppy's wandering away in the yard now and won't come back when called. And it's because that's the time period where they start to get a little bit of confidence and they start to really try to explore away from the home nest. So lastly, this third stage of socialization we have is sort of like that lifetime socialization. This is not technically socialization in the sense of the scientific terminology. This is really just kind of our cultural way of explaining to each other and understanding understanding social encounters, humans to humans, so it's just kind of like a catch-all terminology that a lot of people will use. So I just wanted to touch base on it, that adult dog socialization is not true socialization, because like we discussed earlier, the real big point of socialization is that we're getting that bang for our buck, and that is time sensitive. So your purchasing power by the time you have an adult dog, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, that purchasing power is kind of non-existent now. So your monopoly money, instead of being able to go out and buy a lakefront cabin with it, it's monopoly money again, and you can't buy anything with it. So at that point, you're not socializing your dog in the sense that you're performing the socialization process. What you're doing is you're either maintaining that socialization that you conducted with your puppy, or you're just conducting new associative learning or new operant learning. So maybe teaching your dog to sit to say hi to people, or to not pull on the leash when entering the dog park, or to greet other dogs in a more appropriate manner. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm socializing my dog. But at that point, we're really just performing training. But it's also not wrong either. So it's in everyone's best interest to keep well-socialized puppies socialized as adult dogs too. So again, it doesn't just stop when the socialization period ends. We do want to maintain that well-developed socialized puppy as a socialized adult. And that means, still taking your dog out, beyond the borders of your house, beyond your yard. I always tell people, if you have an adult dog that enjoys the company of strangers, enjoys the company of other dogs, to make it a point to take them out at least once a week. And that, that's usually pretty sufficient in helping to maintain your dog's social behaviors throughout the rest of their life too. So we're going to watch a little video clip, and this is just going to be a really great example of this bang for buck that we're talking about tonight. You'll see I'm working with an 8-week-old golden doodle puppy who at this point is pretty shy and fearful of new people and new objects. And although the clip is trimmed a little bit to just fit in this PowerPoint to make sure there were no technical issues. But this transformation happened within, I think, a total of maybe 8 minutes. And you can see by the video clip, I'm in the same clothes, stuff like that. It's all in one session. So you'll be able to see a shy, reserved, avoidant puppy go to full on play mode. So it's pretty spectacular. So we'll watch that now. So I love Finn. That's Finn. He's now 5 months old, and I just had him in basic manners adult class the other day, and he is one confident, awesome dog now. So you can see in the beginning, he was very, very avoidant. I trimmed out a little bit where he actually just completely left the room. He was not interested in me at all. He was not interested in, I had all sorts of treats. I had all sorts of toys laid out. He was more interested in, getting space and watching from a distance. And that was okay. I respected that. I didn't want to push him beyond what he was ready to do, because like we've, already discussed, those good experiences go a long way, but so do those negative ones. So I definitely wanted to respect the time and the space that he needed to, accept this strange new person into his house. And it didn't take very long. If he looked at or walked towards me, I just tossed some treats. I did not hand feed him, and I let him come over and smell me. I didn't touch him or pet him when he did. I let him come in his own time. And then his parents had told me that the water bottle and the sock, which you heard crinkle, was like his absolute favorite toy. So I used that to try to use play to get him to come out of his shell a little bit. And he responded extremely well to that. And that's because, like we talked about earlier, this socialization period is really when dogs respond really, really well to play behavior. It's how they establish relationships with other dogs. And it's when it starts and when it's kind of dominates the whole socialization period. So it's like their number one way of interacting with the world. So that worked really well. And then we were best friends ever since. So this just goes to show that you get a lot of bang for your buck during the socialization period, because if Finn was 5 months old or a year old, 2 years old, and he was showing those behaviors to me when I came into the home, those avoidance behaviors, wanting space, wanting to get distance, watching from afar, not willing to take treats, even hesitant to take treats that I tossed pretty far away. That would have taken, I mean, depends on each dog and each situation, but it definitely, I would not have expected a transformation from where we started to, him approaching and wanting to play with me and pet me and let me pet him. I wouldn't have expected that from a dog outside of the socialization period in any less than at least 2 or 3 really good sessions. So a lot of bang for buck. We got there in 8 or 10 minutes as opposed to 8 or 10 weeks, essentially. So now we're going to go over just one of the biggest myths we hear about the socialization period and about socializing dogs. We hear a lot of people say, well, it's all in how you raise them. And although there is a lot in how you raise them, it is important how you raise them, it is not true. Behavior is influenced by a multitude of factors. And 4 of the biggest ones are genetics, epigenetics, early development, and then those early life experiences. And those early life experiences are starred because that's essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about the socialization period. We're talking about curating all of these really great positive experiences for our puppies so that stays with them later in life. And also preventing those really negative experiences from installing any fear or apprehension. So it is not in all in how you raise them. And I think, this is really something, at least as a dog parent as well as a dog trainer, this is actually a relief for me, because, I think we take our dog's behavior so personally sometimes that it kind of like relieves a little bit of that weight on your shoulders, right? So you can do everything right, and it doesn't mean that you're going to have a perfect dog. There's no such thing as a perfect dog. So you can do everything right, and you can still have a dog that barks on leash or, pees in the house or bites strangers who come in the door. So we have genetics, epigenetics, early development, and all of these early life experiences that are playing a role in our dog's behavior, never mind the, immediate environment that they're in when they're behaving. Okay, and then now we're going to touch on what socialization is not. Socialization is not flooding your puppy with as much stimuli as possible. And I don't mean this in a way that like nobody does it intentionally, right? But we hear it's confusing. It's confusing. We hear all of these different contradicting information about what socialization is, how to do socialization. And I don't know, like raise your hand if you've heard your puppy has to meet 100 people within the first 30 days, or 100 people in the first week, or 100 people before they're 12 weeks, or whatever the time requirement is. I know I have. And sometimes, we'll think, okay, there's so much to do and so little time. Let's just bring them to Lowe's at the busiest time, and then they can see all the different people in one shot. And then I have to go back to work on Monday. And then by next weekend, I'm already a week lost in the time sensitive period. So I don't think anybody does this intentionally, but flooding your puppy with as much stimuli as possible is really kind of teetering into that territory of overwhelming them, making the experience a scary one, or at least making the experience unpleasant. And we really, really, really want to do everything we can to make sure that these experiences are positive. So we want to go even beyond it's just neutral. We want to make these experiences positive, especially if the expectation is that our puppy as an adult dog is going to be in this environment throughout their life. So when in doubt, just take it slow, start small, and progress as your puppy is showing signs of being in a positive state. Loose body, wiggly, they're not panting, they're able to take the treats from you, take them gently. They're not avoiding and running away or trying to flee. Another thing that socialization is not taking your puppy to the dog park to let them learn from older dogs. First, we do have to be mindful that socialization is happening, or we should be conducting the socialization process before our puppies have received their full set of vaccinations. So we definitely do not want to be taking them to a dog park, and for health reasons, but for behavioral reasons, we don't want to be taking them to a dog park either. It's kind of like throwing a toddler in there in high school and you're like, woo, figure it out. I know that like for us, we think puppies, it's hard to remember that they are still so young. They're like newborns or toddlers, and even just a dog who's 5 months old is like a teenager. So that's a huge difference in social skill development. It's a huge difference in confidence level. It's a huge difference. And it's also overwhelming. If you think of going to a dog park, you've got like rambunctious, raucous dogs running around all off leash, barking. They're probably mounting, playing. They're doing what they should be doing. And we want our puppies' experiences with other dogs to be positive and confident building. And then you also have the size difference. So it's just best wait until your puppy is in their juvenile period. So not going to the dog park before at least 6 months old. The next thing socialization is not throwing your puppy in the deep end so they learn to swim. And that's figuratively and literally speaking. It's summertime here. My dog does not swim. and he probably doesn't swim because I made the mistake of, I mean, not in his socialization period, but I made the mistake of really wanting him to be able to swim. And I kind of like lured him in with his tennis ball, which he really, really, really loves. And that was kind of a conflicting situation for him. So although I didn't actually physically pick him up and throw him in, I definitely took his ball. I didn't know any better then. I took his ball and I lured him into the water, and that was, you know, a negative experience for him. So now he's very picky, very particular about how he gets into the water and if he gets into the water. And now I know better to respect that. But yeah, we definitely don't want to just throw them in and say, figure it out. We want to curate the experience and we want to guide them so that it's not so scary and that it doesn't prevent them from being exploratory and trusting that we're there to help them through this period. You know, they're just babies. Another thing that socialization is not forcing them to interact with things because you want them to like it. And that's a little, that's advice to myself 8 years ago. So I really regret doing that with my dog's ball to get him into the water, because essentially I really wanted him to do water sports with me and to swim in all the Great Lakes in Washington. So you definitely do not want to force your dog to interact with things just because you want them to. And, you know, more, especially with young puppies, more than likely, if you allow them to interact with things, people, objects in their own time, they'll warm up pretty quickly. Just like you saw Finn in the video earlier, he warmed up to me really quickly. If I had forced him to interact with me, or if I had kind of like chased him and then tried to, you know, like, here's some treats, and, you know, maybe pick him up and here, have some treats, then it likely would have taken a lot longer for him to actually like me, if he ever would at all. So socialization is also not just having a large number of people over to your house one time and then just being like, okay, I got it. I got my 100 people. We had a big barbecue. We're good. And this is where, you know, our industry gets it's really confusing, and we put out all this conflicting information. And the reason I say that socialization is not that is because we really need to have repeated experiences. We get a lot of bang for our buck, but we also can't, like, you know, if your puppy sees, let's think of something really strange. Let's see, one person in a Halloween costume one time, and that's it. And then Halloween comes around and then they see hundreds of people in a Halloween costume. You know, that one time, one experience is likely not enough to carry through the rest of their life. So you need quality, and you need at least a few exposures, especially if it's something that they're going to experience, like people, quite a bit. So you don't want to just have let's say a workman come over one time when your puppy is in their socialization period. You maybe want to schedule like a couple of things that need to be done around the house so that they have that experience a couple of times, just to let it, you know, really sink in, and to really leave that lasting impression. And then the next thing that socialization is not picking up and passing your puppy around from person to person. I think this is something that we often do because we can. Puppies are small, they're cute, we want to cuddle them. They are taking in so much of the world that they tend to not be very outwardly resistant. So it's not like a adult dog that's going to run away from someone trying to chase them and pick them up. They're still learning. So maybe they have a neutral expectation of what it means to have somebody walking up to them and reaching out with their hands. But then it just, you know, it'll take 3 times and then they'll learn, ooh, that means someone's coming to pick me up and I didn't necessarily want that or like that. I'm not even sure who that person is. Now I'm just going to run away. So we definitely want to be mindful that dogs have a choice, and that just because we can doesn't mean we should. So we want to make sure that we're handling our puppies. Absolutely, that is a huge part of socialization. But we want to make sure that we're handling them with respect, and we're paying attention to the signs and the signals that they're giving us with their body language as to whether or not they're consenting to that. So if they're leaning away, if they're walking away, anything like that, turning their head, licking their lips, we definitely do not want to just say, hey, let's have a puppy party and everybody pick them up and pass them around. Yeah. Next, socialization is not pulling your puppy on leash towards something they do not want to encounter. I see this a lot from very well-meaning puppy parents. They say, why are you scared? Why are you scared? It's okay. Look, 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 I'll show you. I'll show you. It's not scary. And then while they're doing that, they're trying to be encouraging and show their puppy that, let's say, the statue on the sidewalk is not scary. Look, I'm touching it, just come closer. And again, we want to make sure that we're empowering our puppies to know that their behavior affects their environment and that they have a choice as to whether or not they're ready to approach something. If we keep the leash loose, we can absolutely encourage them and be there for them, give them praise. You can stand by whatever it is, just as long as we're not pulling and forcing them to engage with anything that they're not ready to. Their puppies are pretty exploratory. So you just give it a little bit of time. They're very likely to do what's called a stretch investigate. You'll see Finn did it in the video when he went to sniff me. They'll kind of plant their paws and stretch their head and their neck out towards something. So that way they get a little bit of the exploration, but they still feel safe to retreat if they need to. So you'll see a little bit of that likely. And then they might start taking some steps forward. But if we give them the space, the time to investigate on their own, they'll come around a lot quicker than if we try to force an interaction. And then lastly, socialization is not just about a few people and a few other dogs. Although the scientific concept and process of socialization is heavily geared towards the social relationships between dogs and dogs and dogs and humans. We live in a very, very, very complex and, stimuli rich world now. And I think this applies to humans too. Like, our brains have not evolved as quickly as our culture and industry has. So we have a huge expectation of our puppies. So we need to make sure that we're thinking about that in the long run. Okay, what kind of things are my puppy going to experience? What do they need to be comfortable around in order to live successfully in this human-dominated world? So it's a little bit more than just people and other dogs. We need to do a lot of body handling. Dogs are going to the vet for their whole lifespans. They need to be comfortable with that. They need to be comfortable with having everything examined. They need to be comfortable with family. Maybe our family is going to change in the next 10, 15, 18 years. So these are all things that we need to think about. Am I always going to live in the country, or do I live in the city and I need to have a dog that's going to be able to ride the elevators, all of that stuff. So just kind of get creative, really think about what your life looks like, and then what it would be like for a puppy who is living in a world dominated by a completely different species, speaking a language that they don't speak. And think about just how foreign all of these things are to them, and then help them experience those things in a positive way before they reach the end of that socialization period. So really within those first 14 weeks. And then the fun part, what socialization is. Socialization is quality over quantity. It's being thoughtful and proactive. It's creating positive experiences using positive reinforcement training methods. So that's positive associations, right? So we want to give treats, play, praise, all of those things to our puppies. And we want to really, really avoid any kind of punishment. Those techniques have a lot of fallout, and bang for buck goes both ways. So one negative experience can have a really lasting effect. So we really want to make sure we're sticking only to that positive reinforcement. And then socialization is calculated exposure to novel people, animals, places, and objects that your puppy may encounter throughout their life. It's going at your puppy's pace, comforting and guiding them through their experiences, protecting them from potential negative experiences, which will have a lasting impact on their future behavior. And then one big hold up with a lot of people getting out and socializing their puppy in those first 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 weeks is that they're unfortunately that their veterinarian is telling them that your puppy can't go out until they are fully vaccinated. And while there is a health consideration and a health risk to be mindful of, the behavioral risk of not socializing your puppy within that puppy socialization window is far greater than any health concerns. And then there's also steps that you can take to, be proactive and help prevent any of that. So you can, when you go out with your puppy, bring a blanket so that your puppy doesn't have to necessarily walk on the floor or the ground or the grass at the park. They make slings that you can put your puppy in, puppy strollers. You can bring hand sanitizer and make sure that if your puppy is actually physically being pet by any strangers, if they're a puppy that likes that and is all for it, that you're giving out hand sanitizer, asking people to just, sanitize their hands first. And then setting up your dog play dates with dogs who are vaccinated. You can do that in the comfort of your own home even. So luckily we have the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior, and they have at avsab.org, it's a much longer, it's like 2 pages. They have a position statement on puppy socialization. So I actually will email that to local vets for people who are looking to sign up for a puppy class whose, veterinarians have said, well, your puppy's not old enough yet. And luckily, so far, at least, veterinarians are very receptive to that because it's coming from the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior. But they say that the primary and most important time for puppy socialization is the first 3 months of life. So that's that 12-week mark. And that because of that, they believe that it should be the standard of care for puppies to receive such socialization before they are fully vaccinated. So if you ever get any pushback from anybody, friends, family, vets, you can just go to avsab.org, or you can Google position statement on puppy socialization, avsab, it'll pop right up, and just link it over to them. It's a 2-page short position statement, and it's really clear, and they have your back. So next we have the advantage of puppy classes. Puppy classes are great if they're run well. So you want to make sure you're looking for puppy classes run by qualified, positive reinforcement, rewards-based trainers. You want to make sure that you're asking how they are mitigating any of those health risks and disease risks. You want to ask what the ratio of puppy to trainer is. You don't want any more than, for me, I would not want any more than 6 per 1. If they have a class assistant, then they can take a few more. But you want to make sure they're small classes so that your puppy is really being well watched and managed, and that it's curated to be a good experience. But there were a few scientific studies done on the effect of puppy classes on lifetime behavioral health, and some of those studies found that puppy class students were less likely than puppies who did not attend a puppy class to experience fear to thunderstorms and vacuum cleaners. And those are just some of the things that they tested. So it's kind of random, but and then reduced rates of aggression, compulsion-based behaviors, destructive behaviors, and excessive barking when compared to dogs who did not attend puppy class. And then lastly, these puppy classes should be only rewards-based methods of training. So you don't want any puppy class that is going to put a shock collar or a choke collar or prong collar or anything like that on your puppy. And you want to focus on that socialization, not the obedience training. So things that the jury is still out on. So there's still so much that we don't know, and there's still so much that we want to know about the specifics of puppy socialization. So some things that we really want to know is how many exposures is really needed to create a lasting positive behavior response to stimuli. So that's basically like, okay, let's say I have a puppy and I want that puppy to like, I don't know, riding in, or, you know, to be well adjusted to a riding lawnmower because I have a farm and we use the riding lawnmower, you know, multiple times a week. How many of those positive exposures is needed to create that lasting effect for my puppy? So how many times do I need to pair the sight and the sound of the riding lawnmower with play and treats with my puppy before essentially we can move on to the next task? So that would be really great to know. And my guess is that it's going to vary by dog because all dogs are individuals, just like humans, but it would be really nice to have a ballpark. And then how much does the purchasing power decline from the critical socialization period? And then after that, and then after the 12, 14 weeks. So basically that critical period was the 3 to 7 weeks. And then we're still in the socialization period up to about 14 weeks. So basically, like, this is really what I want to know is like how much of that power do we lose as we progress along, you know? So what's the difference between a 7-week-old puppy and a 14-week-old puppy? Would a 7-week-old puppy only need 2 really good experiences to have a lasting behavioral effect, and a 14-week-old puppy need 10? Or is it maybe 2 and 3? So I think that would be really helpful to know. And then how long should these exposures last? So should we be, you know, pushing our puppies in the cart at Hobby Lobby or Home Depot or Lowe's, you know, because they're too young to kind of walk on the ground? Should we be pushing them in the cart for 5 minutes and then go home and go back the next day? Or should we be there for 30, 45 minutes? These are things that we're not quite sure of yet. And, you know, as of right now, we just say, follow your dog's reactions and your dog's behavior. And, you know, when in doubt, keep it slower, keep it more low key, and build gradually. Then if a puppy has a neutral or a negative response, should we create a positive association, again, through longer gradual exposures or short and repetitive exposures? So this would be really great to have, because most puppies are at some point going to experience something that they are at least neutral about. You know, it's very rare that everybody likes everything or every puppy is comfortable with everything that they see on the first try. So it'd be really great to know, okay, this puppy did not have a good response to this set of balloons, and now what's the best protocol for creating a positive association for them, because they live with 3 young kids that have birthday parties, you know, obviously every year, at least 3 times. And then exactly how many people do puppies need to meet? We hear all these different recommendations. 100 people? Do they need to meet 10? Do they only need to meet 3? And, you know, and by 3 or 10 or 100, I mean of the same demographic. So for a dog, a woman is different than a man and a hat and a tall man and a short woman and someone with a beard and an older woman and a child. So if we think about all the different demographics of people and the diversity that we have, do we need to have 100 of those encounters per demographic or 3? So that's something that we really need some more research on. And then our socialization period's different between breeds. So would a German Shepherd enter the critical socialization period earlier or later than a Chihuahua? We do have some evidence that yes, that it is different. There was a study done on 3 different breeds that showed 3 different kind of behavioral markers at different time periods for entering the socialization period and different developmental periods. But there's also evidence of a variation just within the litter. So you could have, brothers who are in the critical socialization period at different points. One may enter at 3.5 weeks, another one might not enter until 4 weeks. And then this is something that we do know, but we've been looking for behavioral markers versus those set in stone time periods. And that has been really helpful in gaining a little bit more in-depth knowledge. So like we talked about earlier, the behavioral markers are those things that a puppy will do that they didn't do prior, that kind of indicates they're progressing on to the next developmental stage. So the critical socialization period, as we know now, starts when the startle response happens, because before that, puppies do not have a startle response. Planning and prioritizing the first 16 weeks. So this is just my personal recommendations, kind of what I've pulled together through all the knowledge and experience with working with puppies, which I don't have like a ton of experience, but this is kind of where I'm at based on what I know. And so I have the phase 1 is planning, and you have the first 3 days at home, and then social relationships, environments and objects, and maintenance and positive reinforcement behavior training. So phase 1 is the planning process. And this is just a little table kind of going over what that entails. So basically, it can feel overwhelming, but you can hire a trainer to help you with this stuff too. But you want to, if you are in the planning process, this is before your puppy has come home. So you want to ask if you're getting your puppy especially if you're getting your puppy from a breeder, you want to see both the parents. You want to ask about the parents' behavior history. You want to meet the parents. You want to take note of how they behave. So, are the parents in the litter, the puppies, are they in the barn or are they raised in the home? And when you get to the site to see your puppy before taking them home, usually they do a couple of greetings or like meet and greets before the 8-week mark. You want to kind of take note, like, okay, I entered and the mom started barking aggressively at me, and the dad couldn't even be in the area because he doesn't like strangers and stuff like that. So you want to take note and definitely ask as many questions as possible about their behavior. You want to ask where your puppy is being raised. Are they in a home? Are they with their mother and litter mates? Are they in a barn? Are they in a garage? Are they in a shelter? Are they in a foster home? You want to the more you know, the better. And then you want to plan. So if you want to plan with your pet care team. So if you work long hours, do you have access to a qualified dog walker that services your area? Do you have a plan for if and when you need to travel, especially in an emergency? Have you chosen a veterinarian, a trainer, a groomer, if you plan to take your dog to a groomer? Those are things that you want to have on board before your puppy even gets home. That way, if anything arises, an emergency or a question navigating the new puppy world, you know who to call without worrying about it. And then you want to make sure all of your family members are on board. So is everybody in the family aware and agree, have they agreed on bringing the puppy home? You want to write out the rules for your puppy. So puppies need clear consistency and guidance about what is expected. It would be very confusing for them if the rule is different for mom and dad and when brothers and sisters are home. Think about things like, are they allowed on the furniture? Where will they ride when in the car? Who's responsible for walks, feeding, potty training? Where will your puppy sleep? Do you have any animals already in the home? If so, have their needs been considered and planned for, especially if you have a senior or an older dog? That could be, puppies can be very overwhelming, and those dogs, that's an adjustment for them too. And they need to definitely have their space and be able to get away and have some downtime. Are there children in the home, and have they been included in the planning process? Do they know what to do if the puppy is jumping, chasing, and or play biting them? Because it will happen. And it's best to, just get everybody on the same page in the beginning, have a plan. And then for the socialization process, you really want to think about, what's the planned lifestyle for your puppy? Is your puppy going to be a hiking companion, a therapy dog, a family pet? Are you going to do dog sports, travel? Those are things that are going to inform your particular socialization plan and what you focus on and what you really put a lot of that effort into during that socialization period. Phase 2, whoop, my dog barked. phase 2 is the first 3 days, and you'll be excited, sleep deprived, cleaning up the accidents. And your puppy will be sleepy, car sick, maybe, depending on if you drove far to get them, and they'll be very exploratory. And these first 3 days, they tend to be very sleepy. They're getting adjusted. So I think it's totally okay to just kind of take a deep breath, relax, and not necessarily jump right into, okay, we got to get out and we got to, meet all these people and experience all these things. So take a couple of days, especially if your puppy is 8 weeks old. You have a couple of days, just, take a deep breath. It's okay. And then stick to a routine. Crate train, use your puppy proofed room, and expose your puppy. So this is still socialization. Expose your puppy at their pace to the gear needed for your socialization outings. So you might need travel crates, a harness and a leash, a sling to carry them in. You might want to kind of expose and make a positive experience with them being carried in a blanket, and with any travel X pens or play pens. Phase 3 is social relationships. So phase 3 and phase 4 are going to overlap. And you don't have to necessarily just only focus on social relationships, but these 8 to 12 weeks, if you want that to be your primary focus, it can help the socialization process to not feel as overwhelming and confusing. You're not like, oh, what do I need to focus on? So within 8 to 12 weeks, social relationships. Who will your puppy be expected to be around regularly? Are you going to have visitors, workmen, delivery men, children, other dogs, cats, horses, farm animals, seniors, police officers come into the house, and my dog is so distracting. And I added this, or included this photo, because this is a toddler and a dog. It's not a puppy, but a dog. And unfortunately, to no fault of the toddler, but, young children, they don't know how to appropriately engage with dogs. It's just not something that they come wired with themselves, this knowledge. Most adults don't understand fully how to engage and interact with dogs. So this toddler sitting on the back of the dog is not an appropriate interaction. And we definitely do not want to be encouraging this or allowing this to happen with puppies. Because like I said, often puppies are small, they're still figuring the world out. They haven't made those associations, but they can learn very quickly that children predict unpleasant and dangerous things, and things that are painful or things that are annoying, or and just because they're not outwardly screaming in dog speak, which would be like growling and barking and lunging, also doesn't mean that they're happy and they're content. So we definitely want to mitigate any risks. So think about if you're going to be having, even if you don't have children, are you going to be having children over to the house? And you want your puppy to have really positive experiences with anybody that you would expect them to be around regularly. So that's going to be curating it. It's going to be teaching children how to interact with your dogs, and teaching your dog that they're safe in the presence of children too, or anybody else, visitors, workmen, deliverymen. Phase 4 is environments and objects. So this is that locality stuff that we were talking about earlier. So definitely vet clinics, definitely groomers and grooming tools, anything like train stations, bus stations, the vacuum cleaner, lawn mowers, leaf blowers, skateboards, bikes, scooters. These are just a couple of examples, but you definitely want to put a lot of work into positive associations with the vet clinics and positive associations with all of that handling that's involved with going to the vet, and positive associations with all of those grooming necessities. So the nail clippers and the brushes and the baths, being toweled, having their paws wiped, having their ears wiped, eye drops, all of that stuff. So that you can start around, well, you can start anytime, but you can focus a lot on that starting ages 10 to 16 weeks. And then once you're at 16 weeks and beyond, this is when you enter kind of that maintenance and training phase. So this is where you can then focus on doing things like the leash walking training and the sits and the stays and the tricks and all that fun stuff. But again, with positive reinforcement, because even though our purchasing power is declining as we go on, it's still learning. And our dogs are learning all the time. So we want to make sure that they're learning fun, good things, and we're not giving them something to be afraid of. So we want to avoid any punishment-based training, avoid any, collar correction tools, anything like that, because we really, really, really want them to understand that the world is safe, because the human world to a dog is inherently a little scary. So we have to make sure that we teach them, it's safe. They can trust us. We have their back. And now that you've got all of those great positive associations in the bank, now you can, put some work into all the fun obedience type behaviors. For resources, we have Fear Free Pets. That website gives you a list of fear-free veterinarians, fear-free groomers, fear-free. Now they're coming out with a pet sitter certification program, fear-free dog trainers. So that's a really great tool and resource for you. Dogwise.com, you can get dog behavior books, and I would say I think all of them are pretty good. I don't know if I've ever seen like a questionable dog behavior book on there, but you can go on there and you can just Google socialization, or not Google, but search socialization, and you'll pop up a whole list of all sorts of awesome resources. You can Google socialization checklist by Dr. Sophia Yin. Her checklist is pretty good. Socialization doesn't have to necessarily be a checklist, but it's nice to have that kind of framework to jump off of, and it'll kind of jog your memory about things that you maybe don't think of, but then you read it and you're like, oh yeah, I need that. And then as far as trainers go, you want to look for CP, DT, KPA, CTC, or VSA trainers. You can always feel free to reach out via email or website. I'm freetobedog.org, or info@freetobedog.org. And I can help you find a reputable trainer in your area, or if you don't have one in your area, one that is available via virtual training. Animalbehaviorsociety.org is where you will find certified animal behaviorist and associate certified animal behaviorist. They are very, very knowledgeable. So if you happen to run into any kind of issue where you're experiencing with your puppy having like a strong fear response, sometimes it's best to just call the big guns in, and that's them. And then if you don't have a puppy yet, but you are thinking about a puppy, or you just want to know more about different breeds of puppies, the Functional Breeding Facebook group is a really great resource, very welcoming to everybody. And there's a lot of great people in there trying to do right by dogs and their people by being very conscious and very deliberate about what dogs they're breeding and what behaviors they are making sure to breed in or breed out. Yeah. And then we have, of course, everydogaustin.org. They have tons and tons and tons and tons of free resources on their website, which is really incredible. If you're in the Austin area, they also have great, fantastic puppy classes up and running. And they do that virtual training that they were talking about earlier. And then freetobedog.org is our website. We also do virtual training. We have financial assistance. And if you're in the Moore County, North Carolina area, we also have puppy classes twice a week, Tuesday mornings and Wednesday evenings. And we have open spots in both. So feel free to join anytime. And questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiff. That was so much information. If folks have questions, feel free to pop those in the chat box. Quick reminders, this is being recorded, so I will make sure that that link gets out to you hopefully tomorrow. If you'd like to make a donation so that we can keep making these things possible, or buy a t-shirt to support us, that would be awesome. Everything's available on our website. And if you've done some of our webinars with us, please write us a review. We're on Google, we're on Facebook, we're on Nextdoor. We'd love for people to know that you appreciate what we're doing so that they reach out to come find us. As Tiff mentioned, we do have puppy classes in Austin. So if you know somebody with a puppy, please send them our way so that I can cuddle them. And also for socialization benefits, but mostly for me. And if you have any other questions, we offer a whole bunch of online stuff and resources. We do have a bunch of puppy socialization checklists, as well as the ABSAB statement on our website at everydogaustin.org/resources. So if you need anything from there, you can always check that page out, and plenty more stuff. Our next upcoming webinar is all about crate training, when you should use it, what it's useful for, when not to crate train, and best ways of crate training. So that one is coming up. And then I think we're going to have a resource guarding one coming up maybe the next month. So stay tuned for that. Quick question for Tiff. I have 3-week puppies. What is appropriate to do with them now? And when should I move them from the whelping pen area to a busier area of our home? Jill, is that 3 1-week-old puppies, or are the puppies 3 weeks old? Because that might be different. Mm-hmm. They're 4 3-week-old pups.
4 3-week-old pups. Okay, and they're in the whelping pen now with mom. Okay, so I actually am not super well versed in kind of like the breeding aspect. I have a pretty basic knowledge of the developmental stages. So I would divert that question to someone with more experience breeding. So that Functional Breeders Facebook group that I mentioned in the Resources Center, that would be a great place to ask those kinds of questions. They're phenomenal people in there, and it's run by Dr. Jessica Heckman, who is just like genetics genius. So I might have a couple of like ideas or opinions, but I don't want to say anything as if I am knowledgeable about that process.
Yep. And Tiff, can you remember the protocol that breeders are often using for handling early socialization?
Yeah. So a lot of breeders use the puppy culture protocol, and what they'll do is the whole, it's actually a really great resource specifically made for breeders or for fosters, who's, anybody who fosters young puppies, like prior to them being old enough to go into homes. And so they go over kind of all of those like standards of care and when is a good time to move puppies around. And then they go over what's called early neurological stimulation, because there is some evidence that minimal early stress helps build resilience in puppies. But there's also a fine line between what is minimal stress or, what's the right amount of stress. So they go over things like, if the mom did not have a natural birth, then you're not going to be doing those ENS. So you're not going to do the early neurological stimulation practices, because the non-natural birth was already that minor stressor that the puppies had. They talk about things like actually, moving the puppies from the whelping box to somewhere else is also kind of like a form of stress for that day. So I really would encourage you to check out that Functional Breeders Facebook group and kind of dig into maybe the puppy culture website, and really get some clear, definitive answers from people who are really knowledgeable about that.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're already doing the puppy culture and the ENS stuff. Puppy culture does include that early neurological stimulation. But yeah, it all comes from the same place. So the folks that run puppy culture are looking at the same research that we are. We just tend to look more on the puppies who are 8 weeks that, somebody just got their new puppy. But for breeders, puppy culture is incorporating all of that same science. And then we had another question about puppy mouthing. Oh goodness, razor sharp teeth. So Shark Week just ended and we had a Shark Week themed puppy biting post on our blog. So if you go to everydogaustin.org/blog, our most recent post was all about how to deal with puppy biting, because it is one of the biggest questions we get. So definitely check that one out. It looks like that's all the questions we have for today. Again, if you want to get in touch with Tiff, you can always email info@freetobedog.org. If you want to get in touch with me, you can always look us up at everydogaustin.org. We would love for you to get involved. If you're not following us already on Facebook and Instagram, as well as Free to Be Dog, definitely do that. And hopefully we will see you soon. So definitely sign up for our next webinars, and we hope to see you next time. Okay, bye. Thank you, Tiff.
Thank you.